Yes, ma'am, we are live now. Please start.
Okay. Julley to all of you, as we say this in Ladakh. My name is Sujata Sahu. I am the founder of 17,000 Feet Foundation. This is a non-profit, as you obviously understood. We do a lot of work in Ladakh. And I'm very happy to be here doing the special lecture series with NPTEL. Today, I'm going to start with a little story. A story about a founder who goes to Ladakh. So I'm going to start now with a little screen share. Just a minute. Okay, I hope you can see my screen now. Balaji, please do let me know if the screen's okay.
Yes, ma'am, it is fine.
Okay, perfect, lovely. So, Mission Julley. This is about Mission Julley, the story of 17,000 feet, before we became 17,000 feet. That is what we were called. I want to take you back to 2010, where I did a solo trek into the Himalayas. This was my first trip into Ladakh. That there is a picture of me sitting on a little, well, it's a little box. And I'm crossing the Indus River to go on to the other side. So this is July of 2010. And as you probably understood, this is the only way to cross the other side of the river. There are no roads that go on to the other side. There is a little pulley, which is pulled by a person on each side. This is the trek that I did. Ladakh is full of little valleys like this. For those of you who don't know anything about Ladakh, it's filled with vast empty roads and largely nothingness. And I was doing a solo trek, not knowing what villages I would go into. This was my first trip. And this is a little school that I saw. This is the entire school, mind you. To reach this school, it took me 3 days. And this picture here is a picture of the headmaster and his entire school of 6 children. This blew my mind. Now, let me give you a little background about myself. I live in Gurgaon. I'm a South Indian. I, like all good South Indians do, I studied, I did my sciences. I did computer sciences, my master's in computer sciences. I worked in the corporate industry for many years, almost 15 years, out of which 9 years was in the US. And I came back in 2002 because I wanted to come back home to my country. My family was here and largely my heart was here. When I came back, I decided to quit corporate and work with children. So from 2002 to 2009, I worked a lot with children. I was a teacher. I used to take children trekking. I'm very, very fond of the mountains. So during the time that I went to Ladakh for the first time, I was a teacher in a very lovely school here in Gurgaon. It's a very nice school. And I used to teach maths and computer science. And then in this little solo trek, my first trip into this region, I come across this school which had all of 6 children, a tiny little blackboard, just one room, one teacher, and a headmaster who tells me he hasn't seen any visitors come in here for a long time. He hasn't seen vegetation. The strange thing, I was carrying a lot of supplies for my trek, and he asked me the strangest question. He asked me if I had some tomatoes on me. I was very surprised. Why tomatoes? He said he hadn't seen tomatoes in a long time. And usually if he had any, he would work with canned tomatoes. So he said, I have a bottle of Nescafe that I could trade with him if I could give him some tomatoes. I asked him to keep the bottle of Nescafe and I gave him the tomatoes. And I said, I'll cook for the whole school. So yeah, I made a meal for the entire school that day. I think that was quite a crowning achievement for me. What blew my mind was, what is this little school with 6 children doing in the middle of nowhere in a village where there is no electricity, no connectivity, and a teacher there who's actually eager to teach. And as you can see by the look on his face, he loved being there. This is a picture of some of the children of the schools of Ladakh. This is a school which has only 25 children all the way from grade 1 to grade 8. This is another picture of another school. Again, primary school children going to school. So those two slides came in there by mistake. They should come in later. But what happened after this solo trek? I went back completely blown. I said, how is it possible that there are schools with such tiny roles? How is it possible that there are teachers who are willing to teach, teachers who stay so far away from their homes? Like this middle school teacher, he himself came from a very far away region, from a different village, and he had spent the last 6 months there. And the reason he asked me for the tomato was because nothing grows in there. In Ladakh, there's precious little that grows. I came back to Gurgaon completely inspired by the fact that there are places in India that I knew nothing about and that I could contribute to. And that became the turning point of my life. Post this, we had the floods of Ladakh, if some of you would remember. So Ladakh was ravaged by floods. Many schools, many areas were completely washed away. And I decided, sitting in my privileged school, that I can do something for the schools of Ladakh. So we started this project called Mission Julley. And I had no idea then, but I knew of 7 schools which had suffered from the floods. So I decided, let us do something about it. So Mission Julley started in 2010 with a vision to just rehabilitate these schools that had suffered from the flash floods. This here is a picture. Mind you, you're going to see a lot of pictures. This is about Ladakh, so I'm presuming you'll love to see these. This is a picture of a truck that was carrying supplies to one of the 7 schools. This truck was carrying books, furniture, library material, a whole bunch of things. This point here is almost at 19,000 feet. The point here is the temperatures at this point was almost minus 25 degrees. It doesn't look so in the picture. But the reason I show you this picture is because the vehicle could not go any further. Here is the point where we kept, you see that little circle, that is where we kept that is where we kept our vehicle. And beyond this point, we had to walk to reach one of the schools. The village was still a 3-day walk away. This village is 3 days away from the main city of Leh. And to even reach this point, it took us 8 hours. So we leave the vehicle there. We carry a lot of the stuff on foot. Now take a look at how we actually moved forward. This is a picture of villagers who knew we were coming. And how do they know? There isn't a phone in this village. This village has something known as a satellite landline, which is kept for emergencies. And for most part of the time, it does not work. So we were able to reach a message to this village saying there is a team of people coming in from this big school in Gurgaon, and they come in bearing gifts. So there was a lot of excitement in the village. There was a lot of children who were waiting, knowing that we were getting something. So villagers, each household contributed 1 horse, 1 mule, and 1 family member to come and help us transport this. This was 25 horses, 1.5 tons of material that we transported from that last point. We walked for 2.5 days to reach the village. And this is a picture of 100 school kids, and this is one of the largest schools in Ladakh even today. This has 100 children, and that's a rarity. So 100 school children waiting by the mountainside, waiting for us. They waited for us for 3 hours for us to land up. And they had no idea who we were. They just knew that some strangers were coming bearing things for their school. As we walked down this with our 25 mules and donkeys, each child started clapping, and they have this beautiful little white scarf that they put around our necks. It was the most humbling moment of my life to understand that but there was no way for me to call ahead and inform the villagers that, look, we are running few hours delayed. These children and the teachers and villagers were waiting. They just knew we were going to get there. This is what we were carrying for the school. We knew there was, the schools were in bad shape, but we were carrying furniture, things like this I'd never seen. We're carrying books. This is a picture of all the children who have been waiting there for us. Now this here, we carried all this all the way, but the school was still a tiny little walk away, and that narrow path, it was difficult for us to even cross using the mules. So there was no other way to move this apart from the children carrying it themselves. And I cannot tell you about the scrambling that happened with each child wanting to carry a different colored furniture. Each child was running for, I want the blue chair, I want the red chair, I want the green chair. This was my introduction into Ladakh. And I thought at that time that I was doing, that I knew what Ladakh was all about. All I had seen till then was a part of my solo trek. All I had known about was that there is a region called Ladakh. It's very cut off. And this was before the Three Idiots movie. So it wasn't as popular as then. And I knew so little about it. The one thing that really bothered me was how little I knew about it. But this mission, Julley, opened my eyes to the eagerness of the children who are there just waiting, isolated and just waiting to get better education. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Ladakh. This is, before I get into Ladakh, this is a video you must watch. When we watch into the school, this is a performance that the children put up for us. I hope you got to hear that video. This is a village called Lingshid. Then it took us 2.5 days to reach. There was a time when it would take 7 days to reach. Today, the road in Ladakh almost has reached the village. Now, if you had a sense, if you could hear what the children were singing, it was an English song. Now, where in the world would a village which is cut off, this village remains cut off for 6 months of a year. So where in the world would children who live in a village which remains isolated for 6 months of a year, where there are no roads, how would they get to hear an English song? And how are they getting to sing it with such enthusiasm? Now, this is where you need to understand a lot about Ladakh. As you can clearly see, that the children were enjoying it, as were the parents who were sitting in the back. And they're proud of the fact that the children knew English. And this is a bit of desperation. This is the aspiration for all the people who live in these remote villages. They want their children to learn and they want their children to know English so that they can get great jobs. So I came back after this mission, Julley, and I said, there are these schools, there are children, there is a people who are hungry for education. What can we do? How can I help? Can I do more than just what I was doing then? I've come from the corporate world and I was teaching in a privileged school where children had access to computers, smartphones, TVs, educated parents, good books, tuition centers. And then here I see this little school. I see a school with 7 kids. I see a school with 100 children. And I see a population so desperate for education. Can I make a difference? I came back. It was like I was driven. It took me, it was months of research, months of trying to understand what the nonprofit world is all about, what or who is a social entrepreneur. And the one thing that stayed with me through all my research was, this is a high altitude regions. And I lived 45 years of my life without knowing anything about it. So I started 17,000 feet foundation to work with just those kind of villages, which are in high altitude Himalayan regions and are just lying forgotten by the rest of us. So here's who we are. We're a team of senior corporate professionals. So I come from a corporate background. When I started 17,000 feet, I also roped in my husband, who's also a corporate professional, as well as our third founding member, who's a Ladakhi. And our vision is very simple. We've envisioned a world where geography and distances offer no barriers to opportunity and growth. We look at an area where opportunity or development reaches every single last village in India or the world. So we will work with high altitude frontier communities to develop them into self-sustaining, resilient, and thriving regions. And I'll explain a little bit about Ladakh and you'll understand what the problems are in the region. This is a bit of a map of a union territory of Ladakh. And now, as you know, it is a union territory. We were earlier a part of Jammu and Kashmir. Ladakh has 2 districts. One is Leh and one is Kargil. Leh is predominantly Buddhist and Kargil is predominantly Shia Muslims. Now, they are at heart, they both speak a version of a local language called Ladakhi. It's called Bodhi. But the medium of instruction in their schools is English. So the uniqueness about Ladakh comes from the fact that it is extremely remote, and it is not like a remote village in Bombay or Bangalore or Haryana. The terrain of Ladakh is extremely rough. And it is a frontier region. What that means, it's a border community. You all know it's all out there right now. Ladakh is in the news for all the wrong reasons. We're bordering China and Pakistan. So it is singularly important to focus in this region for these reasons. Ladakh means the land of high passes. It's about 60,000 square kilometers of the toughest and most inaccessible inhabited regions of the world. Parts of Ladakh, there is a Dras region of Ladakh, which is the second most coldest region in the planet after Siberia. Here are some pictures again, back to pictures, which I hope you like. This is a tribal population. So Ladakh is completely tribal, and they have barely 300,000 people. But strangely and interestingly, we have that many tourists who come to visit the region today. And even today, many of the regions still do not have access roads. And this is a very typical example of people traveling by mules, donkeys to reach the last mile. As you can see, there are no roads. This is a picture of a very remote village called Fotoksar. We've traveled so much. I mean, it is remote, as in it takes about 5 hours to reach there, but this is probably centuries old. And the amazing thing out here is that people have lived here for centuries and they don't really want to migrate, but they're forced to migrate simply because of education. This is one of the biggest things that they aspire for. People here are sustenance farmers, and you'll ask me, what do they farm in this barren land? Many parts of Ladakh are barren, yes, but there are parts which are not, and there is a lot being done by the government to actually bring in seeds and crops that can actually grow in these areas. Largely what grows here is potatoes, peas, barley. Now, I mean, watermelons are growing there right now. This is a village. The same village seen from the other side gives you a sense of the isolation. Many of these villages still do not have continuous electricity. Electricity is there only for 3 hours in a day, maybe in the night. But 65% or more of the villages do not even have 2G mobile connectivity right now. The amazing thing here is people have lived here for centuries in isolation, but in a great sense of community, supporting each other. This is a picture all of you, I'm sure, would have seen. This is the famous Pangong Tso Lake, which you will see in every movie. And this is where over 300,000 people, almost equal to the population of Ladakh, come to visit Ladakh every single year. People coming here, it's a tourist destination, but here is the thing. There are villages surrounding these. There are plenty of villages surrounding these. They're not even large enough to be called villages. They're actually just settlements. The children and families who live in those settlements may not have even seen the lakes themselves. They have very little idea that there are lakhs of tourists who come here every day. Now, this area has 1,000 schools, and this is part of the research that I did when I came back from my trek, 1,000 schools. Now, the trekking routes and the tourism routes cover barely 10% of Ladakh. So where are these 1,000 schools? Here is some sense of, I'll give you some pictures of the schools of Ladakh. This is a remote school. This school has today 40 children. As you can see, this is actually border area. This is China border. The children go to school. The amazing thing here is children love going to school. When I did my first visit here to this little school, I remember seeing this. This was in November. The temperatures were about minus 15 degrees at that point. I remember going to this school and I saw this child didn't have socks on. And I had 3 pairs of woolen socks and big thick boots. And I remember thinking, how are children sitting here? How are they studying? I saw 2 children who, I will show you a picture. I saw 2 children who were actually babies. And it turns out these babies were actually the children of teachers. So the teachers who themselves come from remote villages, they take a room. They come here to teach, but because they have very young babies, they bring their babies to the school, and the entire school looks after the babies while they also study. This picture, this slide which came in earlier, this is a picture again. This is almost half of the school. This school has 25 children from nursery all the way to grade 8. So as you can tell, the average classroom strength would be barely 1.5 children per classroom. This is a tiny little school in the Nubra Valley. You must have heard of Nubra, the double hum camel. So this is part of this. The amazing thing, the reason I'm showing you these pictures is 1,000 schools. Our team visited each and every one of these schools. We didn't leave even one school. The government record showed 1,000 schools, but we said we won't see it. We have to believe it to believe it, we have to see it. So we visited each and every one of them. Every school had children in attendance. Every school had teachers teaching. That shows you the level of desperation. This is again another picture of another school. Every hamlet in this beautiful union territory of India has a school. It just speaks of the commitment of the local government to even set up a school. Because villages are extremely far apart. It is difficult for a child to walk and go to a school in a nearby village. Children come to school even in minus 15-degree winters. This is a remote area of the Kargil district. So when you guys say Ladakh, I hope after all those of you are listening, Ladakh is not just Leh. Ladakh is Leh and Kargil. There are 2 districts. So the Leh people from Leh as well as Kargil are both Ladakhis. So you should know. Here is a picture of the famous Chadar trek. Those of you trekkers who or aspiring trekkers must have heard of Chadar. Chadar is a frozen river, the Zanskar River, which freezes somewhere starting around November onwards. November, December, it starts freezing up and it freezes enough to walk on top of it somewhere in January, but it's always an iffy thing. Now, this frozen river is a lifeline for most Zanskaris, lifeline for most people who live beyond this river, because in the winters, the mountain passes are covered with snow and it is difficult for people to come out. If the villages don't have roads and the roads are not cleared by the Border Roads Organization or the Indian Army, the villages there remain within those villages. So they're pretty much shut for 6 months of a year. The only way out, honestly, is to walk this frozen river. And this is not always the safest thing. But during emergencies, the only way out is to be airlifted by the Indian Army, the Indian Air Force, who do their best to help these villagers who are stuck. The way the people live, temperatures here go down to minus 50 degrees in many parts of Ladakh. And winter starts somewhere around winter for us normal human beings, starts somewhere around November, and it is cold until March. This frozen river is a lifeline for people who have to walk. So the desperation of people who want to send their children to private schools. Now, despite the presence of so many government schools in the region, parents feel that, look, the government school does not look that great. So I would prefer to send my child to private school. But being sustenance farmers and not having a source of income, it's very hard for them. So these guys actually prefer there are people who sponsor children. So you could be a trekker, or if you wandered into a village. So many people have said, many people take on sponsorships. They look at the state of the government schools and they sponsor for a child's education in the city. Now, parents want to send their child into the city areas, but they have to walk the frozen river during the winter vacations to bring their children back. And this is very, very dangerous. There have been cases when fathers have died after dropping their children in the private schools. But this is now a trek for people like you and me who come here just for, well, recreation. This is a typical inside of a government school, which is possibly true in many parts of India, but in Ladakh, it's particularly harsh because of the winters. In these bare wooden floors and minus 20 degrees, it gets really hard. That little child you see there is one of the teacher's child that I'm talking about. This is a video you have to see of a school in Dras, which I visited in the month of, I think, March. This is March. It's a very quick video. I'm coming into some of the classrooms. It's just not open at all. It's completely covered in snow. I'm going to attempt to go inside. Here it is. Just imagine when the snow melts. It'll take a couple of months to melt, but none of these classrooms are usable. This is the school. This is a sight beyond missing. Here are some kids. Hi. Ajao. This is a school in Dras, the second coldest inhabited place in the planet. In this, I went in March. As you can see in March, this, by the way, we are almost at the second story of the school. The classrooms at the lower level are completely boxed in by snow. The windows are white in color. You can't see outside. And as you can see, that was me talking. And these are amateur videos. Excuse the shaky camera. But as you can see, children are coming into school. And to get the snow cleared. So 17,000 feet has done a lot of work in here, and I'll show you some bit of the work that we've done. But most of the classrooms are covered in snow. The playgrounds we've set up are covered in snow. There's snow about some 10 feet, 20 feet at times. So what is the problem? So Ladakh, but there are hundreds of people, thousands of people who stay there. They're happy where they are. So what is the problem? And what is 17,000 feet trying to do? So the problem is that hundreds of children are actually leaving their homes and migrating to cities for education, despite the presence of government schools. Now, when a 3-year-old child has to leave his mother and father and families, and he's dropped off into a dormitory or a hostel in the city to stay, there are obvious problems that can happen. The least of it being, poor education. So poor health could happen, and most of the times children actually drop out after the 8th grade, and there aren't enough jobs for these children, and neither can the children come back to their villages. They lose touch with them. So 17,000 feet was born out of a desire to help stop this problem of migration. Can we somehow make it better for the people to stay back in their remote villages, for these children to stay back in their homes so they don't have to migrate? And if they do, it's more out of a sense of choice than out of desperation. So what 17,000 feet does, very simple. We want to increase awareness about remote villages. And that's one of the reasons why I'm showing you these videos and pictures. We want to improve education in government schools because that is the single largest reason for migration even today. And we look for ways in which we can create opportunities for income within these communities. So today, most of the people travel to the big cities for work. They leave their families behind, travel to the big cities. But what if we could get them income within their villages? Why would they then need to go this far? And so that's what 17,000 feet does. I want to share with you a little bit about. So when we started this, I had no idea what it is like to be a social entrepreneur. I come from a corporate background, IT, working in big companies. And it was a big eye opener for me. I went to a lot of nonprofits to ask them how people work. What is the method of working? What can one expect? And the one thing that we went to a lot of nonprofits, and the largest ones in the country. And though they were all very willing to help, but for them, working in a place like Ladakh was very daunting because of the temperature, because of the terrain, because you have to walk, because of the lack of basic infrastructure. So when I did the research, I realized one thing, that there aren't any large nonprofits in this region at all. And it's not just Ladakh. The entire northeastern Himalayan belt faces the same problem. So we figured if we wanted to do something for this area, we have to do it ourselves. So it took me a month of trying to garner support. People were willing to help with books and with knowledge, but beyond that, it was all left to us. So I just rolled up my sleeves, and we started with a small team of volunteer Ladakhis, and this is what we've done so far. It's now 8 years. I formally established 17,000 feet in July of 2012. And first thing we did, I'm a techie, right? First thing we did, I wanted to make sure I knew where these schools were. So I went and geomapped every single school in the region, built a GIS database. This is a small map of just the Leh district. I looked for Google. I looked at the Google Maps and I said, where are these villages? If you're saying it's 1,000 villages, where are they? So looking for it was a tough task because they were just, probably, if there were trekkers who went to certain regions, they would have pinned a location, but otherwise there was very little information. Even today, if you Google about Ladakh, there is very little information, barring just the tourism related information. So we went to each and every single hamlet settlement, and the border areas there at that time, we could not travel, so our local team traveled. So the first thing we did was, if we put these villages in a map, could we then encourage people like you guys? Could we encourage you to visit them? And maybe go to a tiny little school. Maybe can you carry a box of crayons? Can you carry footballs? Can you carry something for these children to play with? These villages do not have anything. They don't have, very few of them have shops. There are medical facilities, are very tiny primary health centers. The larger villages have them. So there isn't much for a child to do at all in many of these villages. So the initial idea for geomapping all of this and putting this on a map was to encourage travelers, because everybody wants to go to Ladakh, right? So the initial idea was, can I encourage you to come to Ladakh and maybe take a day off from your tourism visit? And can I encourage you to go to the tiny little hamlet, which is a school of 7 kids, And can you help me set up a library? But once we put this up, we realized that again, trying to crowdsource help was not great, would not work. It won't be long term, it won't be sustainable. So this became a tool for us to plan our interventions. So all the data we collected went into a backend database from which we started planning our interventions. And we realized that if we could upgrade the infrastructure, if we could start training teachers, if we could improve the faith of the villagers in their government schools, then we can hope to reduce the migration that was happening. So this is what we did. We started improving infrastructure. So you saw the pictures of the government school earlier. This is what they look like now. This is a remote village in Nubra. This is a Pakistan border. This now is a picture of some children sitting on their one of their rope climbers. We've set up playgrounds in 134 schools. Many of these we had to carry on horseback. Many of these took us days to install because in these areas without electricity, this is here is another playground in a very barren land. Without electricity, without massive machines, trying to drill holes in this tough terrain is impossible. And we didn't do this alone. The entire communities would come out to help us. They would spend days. I've seen breastfeeding mothers bring their little babies, take turns, and help to break rocks. We would bring in labor on our own, but they would come and contribute in terms of giving us either giving everybody food or just helping to install this. Entire communities would pool their resources together to get some take turns to help with this up. So 134 of these schools have this, and this year we're putting up another 30 more. Here is a little video that you might enjoy.
Good. Ashasung. Wapas. Losung. Go back. Arsung. Ashabash. Yaung. Ditarung. Yo. Ashabash. Arlo. Good. Yo. Di carry. Yo. Ayalo socha. Video.
This never fails to bring a smile to my face. These are playgrounds. Parents had never seen playgrounds. Villagers had never seen anything like this before. What I haven't shown you is videos of parents wanting to come and sit on the slides and swings and seesaws and take a turn because I've never seen anything like this. These kind of equipment by most parents, they're very happy that their children are getting better exercise and they feel that this is going to give them great training to get into the army. This is another thing that we have done. We've set up furniture now. Children sit in the cold floors in minus 25 degrees. And we said, why do they need to sit hunched on the cold floor? Why can't they have access to furniture like you and me did in our schools? So we carried furniture. This is about 120. Actually, no, it's a lot more than 125 schools at this point that we've carpeted and painted. Here is another school. This school, by the way, is exactly 5 children. This is very close to the famous Pangong Lake that most of you would love to visit. It's a tiny little village called Man. There's one teacher here and 6 children. This teacher has been teaching there for the longest time. She belongs to that village. And the enthusiasm with which she comes there every day to teach is out of this world. We've painted this school. As you can see, what we've done in the wall is also set up, drawn characters from our favorite books. In the corner there is our library rack. It's a famous 17,000 feet library. So these are pictures of paints. We bought paint for lots of schools. We got them white colored paint, but the communities were so inspired. They said, ma'am, can we get paints in different colors? Can we put up anything in our school? I said, it's your school. So we gave them white paint, they pulled in together, got some colored paint, and this is a look and feel of, what these schools are looking like today. They chose their own colors, put their own things, and the beautiful idea, 17,000 feet has been able to do a little bit, but the communities are taking it much further than we dreamed of. Carpeting for so many schools, again, the same 140 schools. Anganwadi centers, if I could show, I should have showed you pictures of what they look like before, but these are where children from 0 to 5 come in, rather, well, 1 to 5. But so all of these Anganwadi centers are painted bars, we gave them carpeting, all the indoor play material that you see has been provided by us, 110 of these that we have upgraded. So, and we set up a library in every school. Children had never seen storybooks about when we started our work. And the first time I gave storybooks to anyone, I remember the teacher asking me that, are you giving this to us for free? The books are so shiny and new. And I said, please have it. And today, so this is a picture of my first library that I set up. The teachers are more excited about the books, I think, than the children. We give each library about 300 to 400 books, and we visit the school every month to conduct reading workshops. So we sit there, we tell stories to children. This is a picture of children reading their books. I mean, these are books on dinosaurs and beasts and spiders, and there aren't even words in the Ladakhi language for some of the animals and fruits and things that you and I take for granted. Many of these children haven't seen what you and I have seen. So the library has opened up a world of possibilities for them. This here is a library that we opened up 2 years ago in the heart of Leh, and this is an aspirational library. It's central heating, it has a movie theater, it's open throughout winters. It's free for all kids, and children come here through the winters to read. As you can see, there's a children reading books to them, and it's been my dream. I've been reading books since a child. I still have books which are over 30 years old. My kids read all the time. They're all big readers, and I've been able to take this to 230 schools, and I hope to do a lot more. Here is it's a little video of generally how I do a reading session with children.
The story of drip, drop, drip. Okay, let's read the story. Bring it this side. Come on, let's all do it. That's the okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Very good. ये लेकिन इतना जो उठाता है बहुत भारी है, 100 kilos है. 100 kilos. आप लोग उठा सकते हो 100 kilos? नहीं, मैं दिखाती हूँ 100 kilos क्या. As Gappu tickled him, Pahalwan ji began to dance. अब डांस करो. Yes, डांस करो. Very nice. देखो डांस कर रहा है और टिकल कर रहा है और जोर से डांस कर रहा है ना. Very nice. Ha ha he hoo hoo. Pahalwan ji rolled about.
Is where here together, yeah. Here is where we wash our faces. We wash our faces, face and hands. Ika duga. Here is where ijaka duga. Chala chu batin duga. Ijaka ngaji lapano dong face jata. Face jana dong. Face jana hands jana wash jana. Which is here is where we wash our face.
That video that I shared is an interesting story. I did that in November of 2012 when I was telling the story. After I finished the storytelling session, I left the village. I remember the children telling me that, ma'am, will you come back again? And I said, yes, we will. They said, no one ever comes here. I said, no, I promise we will come back here. And I had every intention of sending my team there. I didn't know if I would go back. But that was in 2012. in 2016, 4 years later, this is a village in China border called Tialing. 2016, I went towards that side. I couldn't go to that village. I went to another village, but there were other people with me. And they went to this village. And the most amazing thing was the children there remembered me, kind of remembered my name. They remembered the story of Drip, Drop, Drip. They remember the story of Pehlwanji that I'd read 4 years later. Gives you a sense of the isolation that these children have being remote. We also have done work on promoting, there are storybooks in English and Hindi and Urdu, but we said, why not local language? So we translate, illustrate stories in the local language. This is a picture of us releasing some story titles few years ago. We're continuously doing that as well. So children should also have something in their own language. And today there's a big push for both being recognized national language as well. I'm there in the winters training teachers. So when Ladakh is shut for the winters, when the tourism season is over, I'm there in the winters where we train teachers. So usually the temperatures at that time dip down to minus 20, 25 and 30, but teachers travel from far and wide to come to the central area for us to train them in various things, whether it's libraries or digital learning or so on. Here's a program also that we do. We create opportunities for people like you and me to go to Ladakh and have a vacation, but vacation differently. So we ask for people, because we're a non-profit, we're dependent on donations to do our work. So if you can become a part of our work, then it makes our life and makes our work that much easier. So instead of being a tourist, we ask you to be a volunteer tourist, to contribute to our work and go help us do these reading and storytelling sessions. So that program is what we call the volunteerist. So this is a picture of a very young volunteerist, a college girl who came with her mother for 10 days. She goes and stays in a remote village. This village is not on the tourist map. So most people, this is taken in a village called Punpun. And she stayed there for a few days. So that means income for the family. She goes to the school, she set up a library, read to the kids, and she conducted our programs. So, and after this, the children got very excited about reading. And today, this was the first library we set up. And today, the school is performing very well in terms of how interested the teachers are and how well the teachers and the children are taking to reading. So when you go to a remote village, this is typically a village where you will stay. You will stay in a local homestay. So we've got 170 villages have been benefited from income because we've sent outsiders to these villages. And this is typically a homestay host. The idea is stay in a village home the way the locals do. You're not going to get the fancy trippings of a hotel. Your telephone's not going to work. But the idea is have an exchange with the local people and see how they've lived there. Maybe take back a little bit of their lifestyle back with you, because it'll be a hugely enriching experience. Also, this is a little bit about how our volunteer programs work.
I think just when I heard there's a program that involves children, means to share some experiences and learn something from them, that excited me, and I signed up immediately. So that there's no looking back.
To volunteer at such a location where there's actually a need and it's not namesake volunteering really got me coming here and participating for this opportunity.
एक्चुअली दिस टाइप ऑफ प्लेग्राउंड इन्होंने आज तक देखा नहीं है. ये प्लेग्राउंड जो है इनके लिए एक नया एक्सपीरियंस होगा. इट विल बी क्वाइट न्यू एक्सपीरियंस फॉर स्टूडेंट ऑफ दिस विलेज. तो ये एक्साइटमेंट जो है ना बच्चों को स्कूल की तरफ खींचा चला ले आता है. तो ऑब्वियसली जब बच्चे स्कूल आने के लिए ज़्यादा एक्साइटेड होंगे, इन्वॉल्वमेंट बढ़ जाएगा, तो वो वन वे अदर वे कुछ ना कुछ सीखेगा.
Given the life that we live in cities and given a chance to do this, I would recommend everyone to do this at least once, to see a totally different side of life.
company who sent their employees on a volunteering trip, who fundraised, set up that playground. So we carry the playground from Delhi all the way there, set it up. This is a village in Kargil. Not only did they set it up, they spent 5 days, stayed at a local homestay. They even painted up the entire school. And as you can see, that is a bit of the experience. And the last thing we have done is, how do we bring digital education into these areas, right? How do you bring digital education into an area which is neither electricity nor connectivity? But we've done that too. Being a techie, that part never let me. So after about 6-7 years of trying to figure out how we can do this, we created a solution called the Digi Lab, which brings the power of digital education, and it does not depend on electricity or mobile connectivity. And today, this has proved to be the biggest boon when all of our children are sitting at home. So how does a Digi Lab work? It's a very simple architecture. Most of you are engineers. It's not rocket science. You'll understand this. So the Digi Lab, there is a school. Every school is given a solar panel and a battery. And a battery that, mind you, can withstand minus 50 degrees centigrade. It's important. And everyone gets a tablet. The tablet has personalized learning content. So the child logs in with his ID and he learns at his own pace. So what he learns and another child learns could be different. And their journey and their learning journey is stored. There is also a TV given in the school. The TV's web content is projected from the tablet onto the TV so the teacher can teach. All of this is powered by the solar panel. So we're not dependent on electricity. In that little tiny school is also a server, which is a Raspberry Pi server. Most of you would have heard about this. This Raspberry Pi server using basic hotspot keeps all the tablets connected. And what it does, it stores the learning journey, the performance of each child on that server, which then creates a little dashboard for the headmaster to look at the performance of his children. So rather than go to every tablet to understand what a child has done, the teacher has access through the server. All this is great. So the Raspberry Pi this is 12 volt. It's a tiny little computer. It does not require extra electricity. So we designed the system to be just dependent on only 12 volts. So now what happens? How do I then transmit this information to the Department of Education, to the secretary sitting in Leh, or to me who is sitting in Gurgaon, or my team who's sitting in Leh and Kargil? So we built another app. This is a last mile connectivity app. And like I told you, in Ladakh, the last mile is still on foot. So this app sits on the 17,000 feet team member's tablet or the headmaster's tablet. And every month our team member goes to these schools, or the headmaster travels from the school to the zonal office where there is a higher chance of there being connectivity. When he travels, this app takes all the data from the local server. When he travels up to connectivity, it just seamlessly uploads it to the cloud, and ta-da, we can all get access. Our data is near real time. It's not real time, but it's great. It's still sitting so far away, I can get a sense of which school has what kind of problem. So this is a picture, again, a solar panel in a remote area. This is a school in Kargil. This is a picture of, this is what a Digi Lab looks like. The Digi Lab is a full enchilada. It's got carpets, it's got desks and benches, tablets, tablet covers, earphones, charge controllers, everything has happened, right? And this is what a full Digi Lab looks like. That there is a battery. This is completely transformed what our schools looks like. And these schools are now looking so much better than even private schools. This is a typical, this thing. A video sent by a headmaster from a remote school in Kargil. This is on the Pakistan border, by the way.
May I come in, sir? May I come in, sir? May I come in, sir? मेरा नाम सानिया ज़ारा है, मैं क्लास 6 में पढ़ती हूँ। थैंक यू 17,000 फीट फाउंडेशन जिसने हमें लाइब्रेरी और डिजी लैब दिया। हम उसमें खेलते हैं, पढ़ते हैं और एंजॉय करते हैं। थैंक यू।
these schools now have this, and we are looking at spreading this. And then the last thing I want to share with you, this Digi Lab is now proved to be an immense boon in the COVID age. Today, when most of the children are sitting at home, and specifically when children in government schools don't have access to smartphones or electricity, the world over, at least in the entire country, governments are sitting up and realizing that many of their children cannot have access to any kind of online education. But today, the Digi Lab is coming to their rescue. Today, from the Digi Lab, our government schools are issuing tablets for their children to study at from home. These are pictures of two kids. Just this guy, as you can see, so the government has taken the tablet, and the tablet can be charged at home. At home, they have 3 hours of electricity. So that is fine enough. It does not need the server to work. So all the content is there on the tablet, so the child can work. He comes to the school once a week, and it automatically syncs up to the server, and the job is done. This is an interesting, the girl on the right, she actually stays in a remote village of Ladakh, in the Changtang area. As with all families, once the pandemic hit, they all moved back. But then when they moved back, they realized that learning was suffering. Till her school called her back and said, "We're issuing tablets." So the entire family moved right back to this village where they're studying, where the family is working, so that this child can continue to learn. The child in the left, Abhishek, he's a son of a migrant worker. He's a family settled here for quite some time, and this is the first person in his household to even own a smart device. And today he has access to a smartphone and a smart device, and he's learning. So 8 years on, where are we? This is it. We've increased enrollment in our schools. I mean, as you can see from 2014, it's jumped up. Enrollment in our schools is increasing on an average of 20 to 30%. And the best part, what we've done is we've been able to reduce student migration in a big way by almost 50%. So the darker bar is our schools, and the pink colored bar is the government schools. As you can see, migration hasn't reduced much, but ours has gone down by over 50%. Parents are pulling the children out from private schools and back into government schools and keeping them closer to home. So where do we go from here? Ladakh is just the beginning. If we can do this in Ladakh, we can do this anywhere else. And there is an entire Himalayan belt of northeast of Himalayan states which have similar problems. And we feel if we can do this in Ladakh, we can do this anywhere. Education today is the single largest reason for migration. And we plan to make that not the reason for migration. This is basically how our remote regions are. As you can see, this is a map of India where the black dots are actually the district rural percentage. So the more the black dots, the more rural areas. As you can see, in all of these areas, there are more rural population than there is in anywhere else in the part of the country. I will skip these. Largely, we are dependent on CSR funds, which means corporates have to donate for us. But if you look at this, the CSR spends in the northeastern belt in the areas that we work in is the least. Most of the funds goes towards Rajasthan, Maharashtra is the largest here, as you can see in blue. But we've managed to achieve so much just because of the companies that have believed in us and all of the volunteers. So we've had about 400 to 500 volunteers who come in here and spread the word about us. So we have about 151 lakh students studying in government schools in the Indian Himalayan region who are at risk for migrating for education. And our hope is that with our intervention, these guys will continue to stay at home. And with that, I will just leave with this small video, and I'm open for questions.
Tamporang song paralelete abali amal skula lam just my galaxy sole kapjan tam kapjan ni nobe na tuzla yon tanjimen na tanga tangkarong male ban malale sa jisigi ta sa ngaya tsoksi no pada sa ta silma silma sa kapela shikjen duko salale tenna ta sa silma silma kan lepche ban
17,000 feet is just a catalyst. We are just providing the opportunity, and if that opportunity, that window is being provided, what's amazing is they take it and they run with it.
मुझे ये स्कूल बहुत अच्छा लगता है क्योंकि यहाँ पर सब कुछ फैसिलिटीज़ है। तो मैं 8th क्लास में पढ़ती हूँ, तब मुझे जाना पड़ेगा हायर सेकेंडरी। मुझे इससे ज़्यादा इससे बेटर नहीं लगेगा शायद।
What separates this project from anything else is the fact that Axis Bank has sent people here to do the job, and not just any people. There are currently 18 senior bankers and 30 new inductees who are here in Ladakh with us, traveling across the remotest villages of Ladakh. And what it does in terms of building the confidence of people is unparalleled. We are so excited because no one's ever done this.
हम सब चाहते हैं कि एजुकेशन को लेकर जो है आगे तक हम जाएं, हमारे बच्चों को भी सिखाएं भाई दुनिया के साथ हम मुकाबला कर सकते हैं एजुकेशन को लेकर।
And we'll stop with that. And thank you all for watching. Balaji, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Balaji, would you like me to take some questions?
Sure, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Somebody has asked about do people of Ladakh eat spicy food and they get opportunities to travel to central India, especially Madhya Pradesh. Why was this question asked? I'm not sure. You know what? Actually, people of Ladakh used to eat fairly bland food. A lot of food actually came in much later. But the interesting thing is now they do. Now actually they need spicy food. Madhya Pradesh, no, most people travel, most of the Ladakhis travel outside for higher education. They come out to Chandigarh, they come to Delhi, Bangalore, Jammu, Srinagar. Yeah. So somebody says, give the email ID. They have a lot of queries. They want to contact by email. Yeah, please, sure. So a lot of good wishes. Thank you so much. There's a question, how can youth participate in such programs to help these children? I said, volunteer. Volunteer anywhere, volunteer in your backyard, volunteer in, in areas where you live in. But if you can come to Ladakh, you can actually volunteer. You can sign up for a 10-day program. There are these 10-day programs, but coming to Ladakh is expensive because it is an expensive tourism destination. But if you can spend 10 days, come with your family or your friends and help us set up a program. So help us set up a library, maybe fundraise and give furniture to these kids and so on and so forth. Okay. There is Abhishek. No. Shreya's asked what needs to be done to implement sustainable infrastructure in education institution considering the Himalaya where it is very eco-sensitive. Absolutely right. So the question here is what needs to be. She's talking about sustainable infrastructure. Agreed, Shreya. So Himalayan regions are very eco-sensitive. In fact, tourism itself is kind of spoiling the region. Tourism itself is, when tourists come in there, they're not at all mindful of what is happening there. So right now, Ladakh itself is gearing up when the tourist season ends every year. It sets back the region a few years. So everything that we look at has to be self-sustaining. That is very true. But then again, there's only so much you can do with sustainable infrastructure there. And 17,000 feet is tried its best to do something. But when you start getting in, we've used solar energy, for example, but then the batteries are not eco-sensitive for sure. But again, when you're looking at trying to bring in digital education, that is the only way to do it. So there are compromises that are being made for sure. But largely, when we bring volunteers here into the region, that's the first thing we talk to them about, is to be mindful about the culture, the ecosystem of the region itself, so that we don't, not only do we not mess up the region, but we go away leaving positive memories behind for the people as well. Again, Arushi from Punjab has asked, what is my future vision with 17,000 feet? My biggest focus, Arushi, right now is digital education. I am not sure if you understand, but there are millions of children who are not studying right now, who have been at home since the start of the pandemic. They don't have smartphones. They don't have electricity in their homes. And if they have a smartphone, their parents can't give it to them because it's just one. Or if they have a smartphone, they don't have money for the data. So millions of children who sit there, and specifically in these hard to reach areas, are without education for so long. And while we struggle with bandwidth, these children are just sitting at home. My biggest vision, at least for the next 2 to 3 years, I want to focus on digital education first. That is a big, big equalizer. And it is, I think COVID has shown us just how far back and how far behind we are. And I hope I can do something to move the needle on that problem. So, and I need my, right there. So that was the last. I have their comments as well on the other side, which I haven't. Oh, somebody actually said, being a Ladakhi, there is a Ladakhi here as well. Siring Choswell from Leh. Okay, Siring has said, being a Ladakhi, even I don't be able to visit these remote villages. Yes, Siring, this is actually correct. My whole team is Ladakhi. I have 2 teams, one is in Leh and one is in Kargil, and they're all local Ladakhi. So the interesting thing, when we started work here, all my Ladakhi team members said, ma'am, we have no idea where these villages are. So Ladakh is about 600-700 hamlets, okay? And today my team has visited every one of them multiple times. And because of it's 60,000 square kilometers, it is so far away, it is, they haven't reached. So Siring, come over anytime you are in Leh, go to our office, visit the team, and maybe you can volunteer with us one day. So yeah. So I think that's it, Balaji, unless I missed some questions anywhere else.
No, ma'am, I think you have covered everything.
So yes, and are we on time? This is great. So thank you all for watching, and log on. Thank you all for your best wishes. A lot of you have written with best wishes. Thank you so much. Visit our website. Actually, website is a little dated. If one of you can volunteer and help us make the website more mobile friendly, that would be awesome for us. So I'm putting that out there as a shameless plug. But more than anything else, look up our Facebook page, which is 17,000 FT Foundation, or 17,000 feet Instagram or Twitter handle. Follow us, spread the word. And if you ever want to come to Ladakh, don't just be a tourist. Come in and be a volunteer tourist. It will help us. Thank you very much. And Julley, Assalamu alaikum and namaste to all of you. Bye-bye.